I really didn't mind if you kept repeating the number of championships I won. Actually, I used to tell people all the time that they'd say, well, you were in the 72 Olympics? And I said, yeah, man, I won 7 gold medals. And they said, no, you didn't. That was Mark Spitz that won 7 gold medals. So, people build me up. I am so grateful. I did not realize that Bruce would be here today, and I want to just thank him. He was an outstanding teammate of mine, like he said, in high school, at the Bowles School, and here. And I also would like to recognize Dave Tanner, who, in the absence of Doc Councilman, who passed away 12 years ago, Dave was really he was the assistant coach, but he was just a guy that was really in tune with it, and I'm just so grateful that you'd be here. I would like to thank Indiana University and the Hall of Fame Selection Committee for this incredible honor. When Fred Glass called me up in May, I was at my kitchen table with my wife Renee, who's here with me tonight, and my daughter Jennifer, and I got this call, and it says Indiana on it, and I'm going, I was probably a solicitor or something, and eventually I got back with them, and I said, this is Fred Tyler, and he says, well, we've selected you to be in the Hall of Fame. And I went, you sure you got the right number? Because I've been mistaken with the football player from Florida in the pros, Fred Taylor. And but he said, no, this is it. I'm just very humbled at this. I mean, my 5 predecessors, the fellow inductees, their stories, absolutely incredible. And I'm very thankful to the Lord Jesus Christ that he blessed me with the opportunity to be a student athlete at what I consider to be the greatest university on the planet Earth. I'm also very proud to be a Hoosier. I was a high school teacher for 35 years. I just retired a year ago. And there was a lady at my school, and she went to Purdue. And so while everybody is fighting about the Florida State-Florida game, which we don't understand at all, and I'm a native Floridian, I'm all about Purdue and Indiana. And every time in basketball or football, if Purdue won, I could count on the fact this woman would come and trash my classroom with all this Purdue paraphernalia. I, on the other hand, had the opportunity to say to her, well, just how many national championships have you all won? So I am proud to be a Hoosier and very grateful that Doc Councilman recruited me. It really all started for me in 1968 at the Olympic trials for Mexico City. And at that trials, Terry Carlisle, we went to Long Beach, California, and we're walking along the pool deck, getting ready to get in and warm up, and there's a big group of swimmers, and they all have red warm-ups on, and my coach says to me, you know who that is, don't you? Well, I was like 14, and I'm going, no, I don't have a clue who that is. And he says, that's Doc Councilman, and that's the Indiana University team. And I went, whoa. I mean, I'm at the Olympic trials. They have this big group of people. Imagine it. It's like being introduced to the New York Yankees. Although I am for the Cubs this year. You can, okay. Well, the next spring, as a 9th grader, I won both of my events at the state championship. It wasn't but a week or two later, and I received a letter in the mail. It was really just on a little notepad, and it was from Doc Councilman. And it said, hey, you did really great at the state championships, and we'd like you to be thinking about coming to Indiana, which I'm pretty sure in today's world would be an NCAA violation. However, from that moment on, I think I really never, ever thought about going to any other university. And the reason was because my mother used to tell me, just as Bruce had said, he's from North Carolina and came to Florida. Well, I lived in the northern part of Florida, or central Florida. The really good swimming was in South Florida. My mother always told me, we're going to go to places where you're going to get beat, because if you don't get beat, you'll still think you're pretty good. So we would go down there and swim. And so I wanted to come to Indiana because I could train every day with the very best swimmers. Well, I was fortunate to make the Olympic team, And I think I'm going to take some water here. I hope I'm not using the same glass, but maybe that's all right.
You're good.
Okay. My freshman year, I started late. After the Olympics, I came to Indiana in January. And when I got here, my hair was really long. I had a mustache and a beard and stuff, and other guys are going, he's not going for that. So before I even went over to Royer, and Drew and I were talking about that, and I'd like to thank Drew for being a wonderful ambassador this evening. He's had the pleasure to train there, only he said the water temperature is like 90 over there, not quite as good as their new natatorium, so I'm grateful that we had a little bit better situation there. Anyway, I'm walking in the locker room, walking through the Doc's office area there, and it's right around the time of the NC2As are going to be starting a couple of weeks, and he just very casually mentions to me, Fred, we're thinking about having you swim on the 800 free relay. And I'm thinking to myself, you don't know that I'm an Olympic gold medalist, and we're the world champions, and you know, what's up with that? And I never said anything to him, but I got the picture right then. He was a great psychological motivator. I mean, it was incredible because I said to myself, if that doesn't count for anything, it must be like my dad said, well, what are you going to do next? And so from that point on, I worked that much harder to make sure that I got a place on the relay and that I was not going to be the slowest member on the relay. I was going to be the fastest. So I'm very appreciative to Doc because he was a great sports psychologist. He knew how to get the most out of his swimmers. And that's obvious with the number of championship teams he had, the number of individual champions, the Olympians that he's had, and so on. So that was just very impactful to me. Probably, though, the thing that impacted me the most was the legacy that he and his wife, Marge, left for me. And when I left Indiana University, I had a degree in business, and that was my intention. I was going to go and be in business, and how that looked, I wasn't really particularly sure. But as time went along, I started to miss swimming. And so I started coaching a high school team. And as I was coaching the high school team, it really brought me back. The competitive drive where I couldn't compete anymore myself, I could now help others to compete. And so I was out at the West Orange YMCA in Winter Garden, Florida, and the principal of West Orange High School came over and said, hey, why don't, since you're already coaching over here, why don't you coach our high school team? And I said, well, yeah, I guess I could do that. And the next thing you know, he had me teaching. And when I left here, I remember distinctly saying I would never go to school again. And I hated math, and they made me a math teacher. So if you don't think that the Lord has a sense of humor, he most assuredly does, because I did that for 35 years. And in that 35 years, what happened is that I followed the formula that Doc and Marge used to make Indiana University such a great swimming team. And my wife, Renee, can attest to that as she became my Marge, in that they were so welcoming. When you came to school here, now you were a part of their family. Swimmers would go over to their house. We would have all kinds of occasions, and I think the big draw was always Marge's lasagna, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty sure that was the case. At any rate, we did that same thing, and with great success, because Renee would always be just like Marge. She was the one who could listen, very gentle, very nice and sweet, and the kids would always come to her, hey, can we get out of practice? Now, that would never have happened with Doc, I can guarantee it. However, many of the things that Doc taught me, I was able to then teach to my swimmers, and we had great successes through the years. And so I've received letters and phone calls and Facebook messages from my former swimmers, all saying and telling me how much of an impact I had had, how much an impact Renee had had on their lives. So what I trace it back to is being here at Indiana University. And while we accomplished a lot of things as a sports team and as individuals, when we were back here for the memorial in 2004, what was so incredible were all of Doc's kids here, not talking about the great things that they'd accomplished, but about their families, about the things that they had done, and friendships they had, and the connections, and all the fun stories. And I can tell you some really wild stories that we had while we were here at Indiana University. But that was the focus, and it was just so wonderful. And so for me, to be asked to come back here, to be asked to join, to be inducted in, and to join in the athletes from Indiana University, the coaches from Indiana University, I went through and I looked at them, and I'm going, wow. And they want to include me. And so when people often ask me, how are you doing? And I tell them I'm blessed and highly favored, now you know why. Because even 40 years after my career is finished, here's another great blessing to my life, and that I get to be a part of Indiana University's Hall of Fame. Thank you all very much.